And welcome to Wild Bill's Media and the Arts podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the brand new AC/DC album there called Power Up. And before we get all into the album or whatever, I just want to do a little, little backstory, little thing into them dropping the album in 2020. So I hope that you guys will enjoy this episode. So I'm try to get into it right this second. But yeah, hold on just one second. So, okay. Now today we're going to be talking about the AC/DC Power Up album. And first of all, I just want to come up and say that I think 2020 has been one hell of a year. Um, 2020 it's taken a toll on a lot of people physically, mentally, socially, psychologically. Um, there really hasn't been a whole lot to look forward to. And that in saying, I guess one of the things that have got a lot of people through this pandemic and everything that's happened in March of 2020 is music. I know it sure helped me out a lot. And a few artists, have released albums this year, but I don't really think any of them had the impact this one did. Basically, you know, we were looking for kind of a light at the end of a dark and bitter tunnel. You know, a glimmer of hope, something to have us look forward to, especially towards the end of 2020, the last 3 months there. Okay, back in 2016 or the end of 2016, pretty much the end of the Ball Breaker tour. Everybody expected AC/DC were done. I mean, basically, Phil Rudd wasn't playing drums. He was replaced by Chris Slade, who, for those of you who don't know, he was the guy who did the drumming during the Razor's Edge album and that era of the band. He was that bald guy that you saw in the videos. Malcolm was no longer in the band. He was fighting his battle with dementia. And he was replaced by their cousin, I think Stevie Young or something like that. And right after that, right at the end of the tour, or Brian Johnson had to step away because he had hearing issues, and Axl Rose stepped in to fill his shoes at the time. And at the end of the tour, Cliff Williams retired. So everybody just sort of kind of had this notion that, hey, maybe AC/DC is done. Maybe they hung up the things, because the funny thing about it was no one had really heard anything. I mean, they hadn't made it official. Nothing was on their on their website. The only post that they had on their website was when Malcolm Young finally lost his battle and fight with dementia and passed away. Well, now, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was sometime around 2018. Um, Brian Johnson and Phil Rudd were crawled outside of a studio in Vancouver, and I think that's right. Now, don't hold me to that, but I know it was a studio that they had recorded some earlier albums before at. And people started getting excited, talking about rumors AC/DC's working on a new album and everything. Well, the funny thing about that is you really can't say that AC/DC was working on a new album. And the reason why I say that is this. Just because someone's in the studio together doesn't make it that they're working on a new album. Hell, AC/DC could have been working on something like a greatest hits package, and we're going to go in and maybe redo some of the Bond stuff that he had been singing for years after Bond had left the band. Or they could have been working on a song for a soundtrack. Anything, can't say that they were working on a new album. And maybe they were working on a couple new songs for something to add to, like a greatest hits compilation or something. I mean, you never really know. I mean, you just have to take those things with a grain of salt. Within rumors from other artists like Dee Snider and stuff said that actually AC/DC was in the studio recording an album. But then again, you haven't heard anything because no one said anything. There was no post or nothing. So as that dark and dismal 2020 started coming to a close around about October, we got a glimpse of the light at the end of the tunnel. And we had got a little snippet from a brand new song by AC/DC called Shot in the Dark. Now, it still hadn't been confirmed that AC/DC was putting out a new album. And I think a couple interviews had come around and finally said they were coming out with a new album called Power Up. And it was going to be released on November the 13th. And my reactions myself was, I was like, oh yeah, I can't wait. I already love this song from what clips I had heard of it. And then when the video dropped and you really got to hear the full song, I was like, man, this is just classic AC/DC. And it's just balls to the wall. And so therefore, when we heard that the album was going to release November the 13th, finally, we had gotten that light at the end of the tunnel. Or somewhat, or a part of a light at the end of the tunnel. And then they had dropped another snippet for a video and a song called Demon Fire. And when I heard that, man, I was like, oh my God, this album is just going to be killer. And, but you never, I mean, you know what I'm saying? You don't think. Well, then November 13th came around. And the album dropped. And everybody got excited. Now, when this album was released, I couldn't help but get excited. And at the time, the only place you could get it was their website. And it was released, and they had a CD, cassette, and vinyl version of it. But I am going to tell you something. I have listened to this album several times now. And critics has hailed this album as the best album in 30 years. And I'd have to say I agree with them. This album is awesome. And what I like about this record is that you have a lot of different things on this record. I mean, there's songs on there that sound like stuff they'd done off of Back in Black, because they kind of have that slower kind of, like Hell's Bells, rock and roll ain't noise pollution kind of vibe to it. And then they have some songs off of there that kind of reminds you of like the Razor's Edge era. And then there's songs off of there that kind of remind you of some of the stuff they had done off of Ball Breaker and Black Ice. And because like honestly, Shot in the Dark, Witch's Spell, Demon's Fire, Wild Reputation, Systems Down, and Code Red are probably the highlights of this album. Now, I'm going to say something. This album doesn't have a dud on it. Every song on this album is worth listening to. There's no filler. All the songs are just killer on this record. Um, you know, and that's what I like, man. It gives you a variety of just different stuff, man. And it's ballsy, man. And the production on this album sounds really great. I noticed that in this album that Brian Johnson's vocals haven't sounded better or hasn't sounded this good in a long time. I mean, it was almost like that time off. He rested his vocals and everything, and when he come back, I mean, I know some of it's probably studio magic, don't get me wrong, but he just sounds so energized singing this record. And it's just, I don't know, man, the guitar work, the drums, everything. I mean, this album is almost perfect, man. And the funny thing is, man, I mean, no one expected this album to drop in 2020. I mean, I honestly was thinking maybe like early 2021, summer 2021. I mean, and you couldn't blame them if they waited. But no, I mean, they dropped this album and it just kicks ass. And what can you say about it? I mean, you can't. And the funny thing about it is, in their career between like Back in Black and The Razor's Edge, they had a few albums there that were just kind of they're putting out albums to put out albums. But this album is not anything like that. If you were to take the best of Back in Black, The Razor's Edge, Ball Breaker, and Black Ice and put them all on one record, this is what you would have. I mean, it's ballsy, it's bluesy, it's just everything you want out of an AC/DC record, and you can't go no wrong. And for them to drop this in 2020, it's just awesome. I mean, I can't say nothing bad about this record. It's just awesome. And for anyone that hasn't went out and got this record, you need to go get it. If you're a rock and roll fan, if you're an AC/DC fan and you haven't got this record, then shame on you. Because this is an amazing record. I mean, it's just, I don't know what to say, man. I wish there was a lot more I could say and a lot more that, sometimes, having a negative thing to say about an album is a good thing because it gives you more to talk about. But truly, I mean, I can't say nothing. The only gripe I have on this whole album is the booklet. I wish they would have included the lyrics. Other than that, the music is outstanding. I even like the cover. I think the cover is cool. I mean, because a lot of, in the past, a lot of AC/DC records, AC/DC records, they had like Angus on the front of the cover. And there's nothing wrong with that, man. But sometimes, getting something different is awesome. And that's what they're doing. And I love it because you've got like just a black cover with like a red silhouette. And it's got AC/DC and it's got all the road gear and guitars and stuff there. And I'm hoping that they tour this album. I noticed on their website that they haven't got any tour dates up yet. But man, if they come around my area, I'm definitely going to see them. I mean, it's just, I'm telling you, man, it is just awesome. So I don't want to get to where I'm rambling, so I'm gonna cut this episode kind of short. But I can't say anything bad about the AC/DC record. Power Up. I'd give it 4 3/4 stars out of 5. It is just an amazing record. You need to go out and get it if you don't have it. Thank you, AC/DC, for dropping this album when you did in 2020 to give us a glimmer of hope and show us there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And it is awesome. So please go pick up the AC/DC album today, and you won't regret it. And this is Wild Bill signing out of Wild Bill's Media and the Arts podcast. You have a good day and a blessed day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.